Hey, welcome back. You're watching Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. Just a quarter past the hour of high noon Eastern here in New York. And as every day, Monday to Friday, we come to you live. Today we are at the Newsmax headquarters studios here in Bryant Park, New York. And as we speak, the Dow Jones still holding well above the 26,000 range. 26,800 as we speak. If there's any sort of good news or spark in the next couple of days or the next week, any closes above 27,000 will establish the newest of new highs, and I think the market can rocket even higher. I don't see any resistance up to almost 30,000, and almost on the same path is Bitcoin, which toiled around at 4,000 or 5,000 after being at 20. I told you a couple of weeks back, if it closed above 8,000 on a Friday, I thought it would be on a rocket shot to 9. And as we speak, it's at 9,800. A close up here in the 10s starts a whole bunch of new technicals, double digits, all this other good stuff. And all the other good stuff is with us today in the Question Tequila studios. Returning to Liquid Lunch, Adam Baumel. He's a Democratic strategist. And John Burnett, seen many times on our weekly show, What's the Deal? Sundays at 1 on Newsmax TV. And the managing partner of One Empire Group. Guys, thanks for joining us on Liquid Lunch. Appreciate it. Johnny, good to have you back. Same to you, Adam.
Thank you.
All this Iran stuff is, you know, Frankie and I have been talking about how there's a lot of saber rattling going on. There's these hawks like John Bolton, and they're trying to push us to war, push us to war. It seems like Trump pulled the reason card last night and said, hey, let's slow up. I want you guys to take a look at what Donald Trump said and then hear your thoughts.
I have a feeling, I may be wrong and I may be right, but I'm right a lot. I have a feeling that it was a mistake made by somebody that shouldn't have been doing what they did.
Who do you think
I think they made a mistake. And I'm not just talking the country made a mistake. I think that somebody under the command of that country made a big mistake.
Go to you first. It seems like the president is doing some reasoned backtracking here when he says, I don't think the country made a mistake. Maybe some low-level soldier said, you know, let me shoot down a drone. What are you thinking?
Well, regardless of reasoning, I'm happy he decided not to attack them. I mean, we're still in, what, 8 now altercations across the world. I'm really happy that we're not elevating it with them over there. But it's something else that we need to be looking at, too. The DOD incorrectly called multiple aspects of what took place. They incorrectly called the flight path, the location, and the context of what took place. So again, I'm really happy that we're not kind of jumping to conclusions here and escalating tensions with Iran.
Well, I think there's some discrepancy. I don't think it's conclusive yet, but there is some discrepancy in terms of the point at which the drone was flying. And Iran is saying, and Iran officials are saying that it was within the
18 miles.
18 miles of the airspace. So there's approximately a 10-mile space that they're actually disputing. Right, so we don't know pretty much where this drone was actually positioned, but one side says that it was outside the zone, the other side said that it was within the zone. When you have a situation like that, you do not go in and start dropping bombs or sending in troops. You try to engage in diplomacy. So far, the sanctions are working well. You never know.
They did. Iran did return a hostage to the U.S. just recently, and you know, one of the things we do on Liquid Lunch, we talk about it all the time, is we don't talk to the crazy red people and the crazy blue people. Most of us have some parts of both, and I call our audience the purple people. And today's a perfect example: Democrat, Republican, Independent. We all agree on something. I ring the bell when I get everybody to agree. But I want to get your thoughts on Roy Moore. Surfacing again in Alabama, potentially hurting the hopes of the Republicans of getting that seat back. Here's a little of Roy Moore.
I fought for our country in Vietnam. I fought for our country and its laws as Chief Justice. I fought for morality to preserve our moral institutions. And I'm ready to do it again. And yes, I will run for the United States Senate in 2020.
John, is this guy going to hurt the party?
I think so. I think, from his perspective, he looks at the results from the last time. It was a special election, quite different from a general election. The turnout is much larger than general. But he's looking at the less than 2% differential in terms of votes, right? He's also looking at the anger that many of the people the residents of Alabama are expressing with respect to what's going on in Washington. And there are some rumors that former Attorney General Jeff Sessions might get back in the race. But we all know that President Trump has some tension with him too, right?
That might not be the best thing. The best thing for you guys is for Roy Moore to be in this race for the Democrats.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But I mean, I think it's important to notice that, we're so used to New York being focused on as the corruption capital of the United States. Well, I mean, the governor was taken out mired in controversy, as well as the House Speaker from 12 different corruption charges. So, I mean, I guess you could say it's maybe a little bit negative thinking on my part, but I'm happy to see that we're not the only state in the country that's marred with these corruption issues.
Well, we're all...
Don't forget about Virginia.
Yeah, we're plenty there. They did have one decent governor, in my view, in Terry McAuliffe. I kind of like the guy in the way he governed, even though he didn't represent my views. But here in New York, we just had, our assembly and our governor decide that they want to give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. And talk about corruption. I mean, to me, that's political corruption.
Right, and then they want to protect that information from the U.S. government, right? So this is ludicrous. They're not only giving out driver's license, they're giving out free tuition, all these things, right? And who's going to pay for that? Nothing is free. That's going to fall back on New York residents to pay that cost, right? And there's also a situation where we don't know who's coming in the country, but yet you're going to give them a valid ID. It just doesn't make sense. And that's not a knock against everyone, right? But when you look at it from a risk perspective, all it does is take one.
That's right. And Adam, shouldn't liberals be jumping up and down on this when a New York resident goes to renew his driver's license? If he owes taxes, he can't renew his driver's license until he pays his taxes. But an illegal immigrant can go renew their license as many times as they want and never pay taxes. So isn't there some equality stuff in here?
Well, first, I do need to actually point out, so there are multiple ways in which undocumented immigrants do pay tax. They pay it on property, they pay it on sales taxes, they pay it in other ways as well. I also need to actually point out another inaccuracy that was actually brought up. So these licenses that are going to be made available are not going to be given out for free. It's actually, I think, if I recall, it's supposed to raise about $60 million a year in taxes. Now, I'm not saying every single way in which we could raise tax revenue is always good, but this is not actually giving them out for free. It's just making them available, which is, I think, an important point to distinguish.
Well, go ahead, Johnny.
Well, look, America's for sale in terms of products, goods, and services, but not our security.
Hey, I think I understand where you're coming from, but think about how much easier it makes for people to live here. Right. It makes their life a lot more convenient. And $60 million doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot of money to start giving people who came here illegally the same rights, and if not easier entrance to those rights than those of us folks who live here and pay all those. We pay the real estate, we pay the consumption, we pay all these other taxes. They're not, for the most part, paying income tax. You got to agree with me on that.
Well, I mean, there's actually another means. So a lot of undocumented people actually do file taxes, and they get no returns. They have no option to get a return back. Now, I don't have the up-to-date information, but it was quite a few $1 billion that actually was taken, I think, from 2015, if I recall correctly.
In New York State?
Nationally.
Oh, nationally. Okay.
Yeah, but there are also reports that there are also, in many pockets, to point to Indiana, one CPA actually was a whistleblower when he found out that he was actually doing taxes for illegal aliens, right, that were actually claiming about 3 to 5 children, and what they were doing is sending that money back home. So we know that there's a lot of gaming the system here.
All right, we're gonna keep gaming the system because you don't see this on television. You don't see Republicans and Democrats having a reasoned discussion, sometimes even agreeing, and that's what these mix-it-up segments are all about. That's why I say we're talking to the purple people, because on Liquid Lunch, all the voices are heard, all thoughts are discussed, and at the end, we shake hands, we part friends, we come back to fight another day. We're gonna take a quick break, fight again right after this.